The jagged cliffs of Vera 9 cut sharply into the violet sky, their edges glinting like shards of glass under the twin suns. From atop one of these cliffs, Lyra stood, her silhouette strong and unyielding. Her eyes scanned the horizon, every line of her body prepared for attack. She had built her fortress here, far from the settlements of her own people, far from the chaos of alien males who had shown nothing but greed and cruelty. Lyra's fortress was a marvel of alien engineering. Sharp walls of black stone rose from the cliffside, reinforced with energy barriers that could deflect the strongest blasts. Towers spiked upward, each bristling with weaponry, and hidden tunnels ran beneath the cliff, leading to caves only she could navigate. Her reputation was fearsome. Across Vera 9, whispers spread of the warrior who would tolerate no male in her presence, and no weakness within her walls. For years, she had been alone. Not lonely, she would tell herself. Alone. It was a distinction that mattered. She trusted no male, for history had taught her the price of such trust. Betrayal, greed, destruction, these were their hallmarks. Lyra had survived every ambush, every coup, every attempt to seize her fortress. And yet, every night, when the suns dipped below the jagged horizon, she would sit at the edge of her walls and feel the weight of isolation pressing on her chest. It was during one of these quiet evenings, when the suns painted the sky with fiery hues, that a glimmer caught her eye. Far below, near the cliff's base, a small ship had landed. Its shape was unlike anything she had seen in the skies of Vera 9. Sleek, metallic, and almost fragile-looking, it seemed to float above the ground rather than land with force. Lyra's hand tightened around her spear. Her instincts screamed caution. Another male, she muttered under her breath, voice low and dangerous. One who believes he can walk into my domain. She descended from her watchtower with the precision of a predator. Her steps made no sound on the stone floors. Every guard and drone under her command remained alert, but none dared approach her. Lyra was the master of this place, the unchallenged sentinel. By the time she reached the lower courtyard, she saw him clearly. The human stood outside his ship, tall but not imposing, with hair the color of warm sand and eyes that seemed to glow with curiosity. His uniform was simple, yet functional, designed for survival rather than warfare. He moved carefully, touching rocks, adjusting small instruments, and occasionally glancing at the fortress towers with admiration rather than fear. Lyra's first instinct was to strike. She stepped into view, her spear raised, her voice cutting through the wind. "State your business. Speak quickly, male, or leave now." The human turned to face her, but his expression held no fear. Instead, he smiled faintly. A gesture alien yet comforting. "I am Captain Elias Ward," he said, his voice steady and calm. "I come in peace. I seek no battle and offer no challenge. I wish to help, if you will allow it." Lyra narrowed her eyes. Help? From a male? On her planet, that was unheard of. Males only took, only demanded, only destroyed. She had spent decades proving that no male could stand in her way, yet here was one, offering aid without even asking permission. "Why?" she demanded, suspicion dripping from her words. "What do you gain from my fortress?" "Nothing," he replied simply. "I saw your walls, and knew they could crumble from the storms we've had. I have tools and skills to repair them. You need not ask. You need not give. I only wish to help." Lyra's grip on her spear tightened. She had faced hundreds of invaders, none of whom spoke like this. None of them acted without seeking advantage. And yet, something in his tone made her hesitate. Something in his calm presence made the walls she had built around herself feel thinner. "Very well," she said finally, her voice cold but measured. "You may work, but do not linger. One misstep, and you will not live to explain it." Elias nodded, unshaken. "Understood," he said. "I will follow your rules." Over the next several days, he moved quietly around the fortress. He repaired broken energy conduits, reinforced walls damaged by past storms, and even helped adjust the angles of the towers to better catch solar energy for their defenses. All the while, he never once demanded anything in return, never spoke of reward, and never sought to challenge her authority. Lyra watched from above, hidden in the shadows of her watchtower. At first, she remained cautious, noting every step he took, every tool he used, every decision he made. But slowly, a strange curiosity began to grow inside her. Why did he work so tirelessly without asking for anything? Why did he seem content to remain in the background, offering help only when it was needed most? Her guards noticed the change in her demeanor. "Mistress," one said, whispering as they observed Elias. "He is unlike any male I have seen." "Should we trust him?" Lyra's gaze never left the human. "Trust," she said slowly, "is earned. Observe. Do not interfere." Even her own thoughts betrayed her. She found herself wondering what it would be like to have someone act with such selflessness. Someone who did not seek to manipulate or dominate. The concept was foreign, yet strangely appealing. One evening, a violent storm swept across the cliffs. Winds tore at the fortress walls, and lightning struck the towers with blinding intensity. Lyra's own energy shields were strained, faltering under the storm's fury. She feared for her fortress, feared for her defenses, but when she looked below, she saw Elias moving through the chaos with unwavering focus. He climbed damaged walls, secured loose energy conduits, and even guided a group of frightened workers to safety. All the while, he never called for help, never demanded recognition, never sought her approval. He simply acted, guided by a quiet determination that was unlike anything she had known. Lyra found herself descending from her watchtower, joining him for the first time. Not because she needed to fight, but because she could not help but observe him closely. Her spear remained at the ready, but her eyes followed every movement, studying his skill and composure. When the storm finally passed, the fortress stood intact, stronger than before. Elias looked up at her, drenched and tired, yet his smile never wavered. "You did well," she said, her voice softer than usual, almost hesitant. "Why do you do this?" "I believe in helping where it is needed," he replied simply. "It is not weakness. It is strength." Lyra did not answer immediately. Strength. She had always measured strength in battle, in survival, in the ability to crush one's enemies. But here was a human, showing a different kind of strength, one that did not rely on violence, one that did not demand dominance. As the days turned into weeks, she began to allow him more freedom within the fortress. He repaired old machinery, optimized energy flows, and even shared insights about human technology, simple innovations that made life easier, without weakening the fortress's defenses. Her isolation began to feel less heavy. For the first time in years, she wondered if it was possible to let someone in, even a male, without losing control or facing betrayal. She did not trust him fully, not yet, but the seed of curiosity had been planted. Lyra's nights, once filled with vigilance and suspicion, now carried a strange sense of anticipation. She watched Elias quietly from the shadows, learning from him even as she remained wary, and though she would never admit it aloud, she began to feel the faintest flicker of respect, perhaps even admiration for this human who gave without asking, who acted without expectation, and who challenged her understanding of strength and loyalty. For now, the cliffs of Vera 9 remained jagged and unyielding, and Lyra's fortress remained her domain. But a new element had entered her life, subtle yet powerful, a human who might teach her that even on a world built for survival and war, generosity and selflessness could have their place. And Lyra, the warrior who had warded off all males, found herself unable to look away. The days on Vera 9 passed slowly, yet the air seemed lighter around Lyra's fortress. The twin suns cast long shadows over the jagged cliffs, highlighting the sharp edges of the walls she had so carefully built. Life had once been a constant cycle of vigilance and preparation for battle. Every movement, every sound, every glance had been measured for threat. But now, a new rhythm had begun, one shaped by a human who did not ask for strength, who did not demand allegiance, and who did not fear her presence. Elias Ward moved through the fortress with the ease of someone who understood both danger and the value of patience. He repaired broken machinery, reinforced walls, and optimized the energy conduits that powered the fortress. Every action he took was deliberate, precise, and quiet. He never sought recognition, and he never acted in haste. Lyra watched him from her towers, her expression guarded, yet curiosity glimmered in her eyes. "Why does he not take what he wants?" she muttered to herself one evening as the suns dipped below the horizon. Her voice carried a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. For centuries, males of her species had sought power, demanded allegiance, or attempted to conquer. Yet here was one who gave freely, whose actions carried no demand, no expectation, no threat. Her guards, loyal and cautious, whispered among themselves, "Mistress, he is strange. Unlike any male we have known. Should we question him further?" Lyra's eyes never left the human below. Observe, learn, do not interfere. Curiosity was not weakness, she reminded herself. But as days turned into nights, she noticed subtle changes within her own fortress. The energy shield stabilized, equipment worked more efficiently, and the workers, those who once feared her wrath, began to move with a little more confidence. And much of it was because of Elias. One afternoon, Lyra decided to confront him directly. She descended from her tower without weapons, an unusual decision for someone so fiercely protective. She found him in the lower courtyard, adjusting the angle of a solar panel to maximize energy absorption. "You do not ask for anything," she said, standing tall behind him. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "Why?" Elias looked up from his work, a small smile on his face. "Because helping is what I do," he said simply. "It is not weakness, it is strength." Lyra narrowed her eyes. Strength? She had measured strength in terms of combat, survival, and the ability to dominate. She had fought off entire clans, repelled invasions, and never trusted any male. And yet, this human spoke of strength as something entirely different. "Strength without demand?" she repeated. "Yes," Elias said, turning to face her fully. "The strongest beings are not always the ones who fight or conquer. Sometimes, the strongest are those who give, who protect, and who act with care and foresight." Lyra studied him silently. His words did not feel like lies. There was no trickery in his tone, no hint of manipulation. For the first time in her life, she felt a faint sense of respect for a male, a thought that both intrigued and unsettled her. Over the following days, their interactions became more frequent, though still cautious. Lyra would observe Elias from her towers, watching how he worked with the fortress staff, repaired machinery, and even taught some of the younger workers techniques to improve their efficiency. He never gave orders. He guided and suggested, leaving the choice to those around him. And slowly, the fortress began to feel more alive, more cohesive, more capable. The aliens under Lyra's command began to notice the changes as well. "Mistress," one of her lieutenants said quietly, "he has improved the energy flow in the towers. The shields are stronger, and the walls can withstand storms longer. He is efficient." Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. Efficiency is not the same as trust. Observe, but do not forget caution. Despite her caution, Lyra began to notice subtle shifts within herself. She found herself lingering longer in the courtyard when Elias worked. She caught herself listening to his instructions, sometimes even questioning her own assumptions about male behavior. His patience, his calm, and his selfless acts challenged everything she had believed. One evening, a violent storm swept across the cliffs. The twin suns had already set, and the fortress was bathed in darkness, lit only by flashes of lightning. Winds tore at the walls, and energy shields flickered under the pressure. Lyra's instinct was to prepare for battle, but as she descended to the lower courtyard, she saw Elias moving steadily through the chaos. He secured loose energy conduits, guided frightened workers to safety, and even reinforced weakened walls with quick improvisation. He did not panic, did not demand assistance, and did not pause for recognition. He acted with a steady calm that impressed even Lyra. When the storm passed, the fortress stood stronger than before. Lyra approached him, her usual cold demeanor softened by awe and curiosity. "You saved much of the fortress," she said. "And yet, you asked nothing in return." Elias shook his head. "I do not need reward. Seeing the fortress stand, seeing the workers safe, that is enough." Lyra's silence lasted longer than usual. She had never encountered a being whose actions carried no expectation. Every ally she had ever known had ulterior motives. Every male had sought advantage. And yet, here was a human who acted purely, selflessly, and without fear. Over the next few weeks, their relationship continued to evolve. Though Lyra remained cautious, she allowed him greater access within the fortress, even letting him assist with the training of her elite guards. The human did not dominate, did not criticize, but shared knowledge in a way that strengthened them all. Her people began to see the value as well. Workers who had once cowered now approached him for guidance. Guards who had been tense began to listen, learning from his calm demeanor and innovative methods. Even Lyra's inner circle noticed the change in their mistress, how she would linger longer in the courtyard, observing the human silently, her thoughts unreadable. One day, while walking along the cliffs above the fortress, Lyra found herself speaking more openly than she ever had with any male. "Why are humans different?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual, almost reflective. "Why do you act without demand, without threat?" Elias looked out over the jagged cliffs, considering her question. "Perhaps because we believe in cooperation, in the strength of others as well as ourselves. We survive by helping each other, not just by defeating each other." Lyra remained silent, pondering his words. For years, she had measured life by survival alone, by strength through combat and dominance. Now she faced a concept entirely alien to her strength, through generosity, through trust, through selfless action. In the days that followed, small acts continued to build a foundation of understanding. Elias repaired old mechanisms without fanfare, helped train young guards with patience, and shared simple innovations that improved life in the fortress. Lyra, ever watchful, began to feel the first stirrings of trust. Not complete trust, not yet, but a recognition that his presence did not bring danger. And yet, she remained vigilant. Her past had taught her the cost of misplaced trust. She would not allow herself to be fooled by charm or novelty. Every action, every decision, every movement would be watched, evaluated, and measured. Despite her caution, a subtle change had taken root in the fortress and in Lyra herself. She found herself more open to observation, more willing to consider alternative approaches, and more aware of the value of collaboration. The fortress, once a solitary bastion of survival, was slowly becoming a place where cooperation could thrive. Guided by a human who gave without expectation, as the sun set and the cliffs glowed under their fading light, Lyra watched Elias quietly. She did not understand everything about him, nor did she claim to, but one thought remained clear in her mind. Perhaps, in this strange human, there was more to strength than she had ever known. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to life than isolation. The fortress atop the jagged cliffs of Vera 9 had never seemed so alive. Energy shields hummed with renewed strength. Towers stood taller and sharper, and the workers moved with confidence they had never known before. Lyra walked through the courtyards, her eyes sharp, but her thoughts quieter than usual. For the first time, she felt a strange sense of balance, not weakness, but the calm that comes from preparation and trust. And much of that was because of the human, Captain Elias Ward, whose quiet generosity had begun to reshape the fortress and its people. Lyra had learned patience, observation, and even a little humility. She had not fully lowered her defenses, she never would, but she had begun to understand that strength could take many forms. And then, the warning arrived. Scouts rushed into the fortress courtyard, breathless and panicked. "Mistress! A rival clan approaches. They come to take the fortress and enslave our people." Lyra's jaw tightened. Rival clans had tried before. They had always failed. But this time, the message carried a new weight. These attackers were larger in number, better armed, and more cunning than any she had faced before. Alone, she could defend her walls, but the fortress might suffer damage, and the workers and guards might fall under siege. She turned to Elias, who had been quietly assisting a group of young workers with the fortress energy grids. His calm eyes met hers, and for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to consider a radical idea. "Elias," she said, her voice firm but not harsh. "We will face them together. You and your people will stand with us. Do you understand?" Elias nodded without hesitation. "I understand. Together, we are stronger." For Lyra, the act of allowing a human to fight alongside her, not under her command but as an equal, was unprecedented. It felt risky, unfamiliar, and yet necessary. She gave the order. Guards moved to defensive positions, workers took cover, and Elias organized his crew efficiently, coordinating defenses and reinforcing weak points. The attack began at dawn, the sky painted with the fiery light of twin suns and the shadows of descending starships. The rival clan approached with overwhelming force, their ships firing energy beams that struck the fortress walls with thunderous impact. Lyra's own energy shields flared under the assault, and her guards prepared for combat. Elias moved quickly, directing workers to strengthen shields and positioning human-operated devices that could absorb and redirect the energy beams. Lyra watched him, noting how his methods differed from traditional alien tactics. Where her warriors relied on brute force and aggressive strikes, Elias relied on precision, timing, and strategy. It was a new form of strength, one she had come to respect. The first wave of attackers reached the cliff's edge, and Lyra unleashed a torrent of energy blasts from the towers. Her spear glowed with power, and she led the elite guards in swift, calculated strikes. Yet the enemy pressed forward, relentless and well-coordinated. Elias remained calm, moving between positions with quiet authority. He directed humans to repair damaged conduits mid-battle, advised Lyra's guards on optimal firing angles, and even guided trapped workers to safety. His presence did not command dominance. It inspired efficiency and confidence. Lyra found herself fighting not only with her spear and her energy blasts, but also with a growing sense of trust. She communicated silently with Elias through gestures and quick glances, coordinating attacks in ways she had never imagined. The human's ingenuity complemented her combat prowess, creating a synergy that surprised even her. The battle raged for hours. Explosions lit the cliffs, energy beams tore through the air, and the sound of metal against metal echoed across the fortress. Yet through every wave of attackers, the fortress held. Walls that might have crumbled now stood strong, shields that could have failed now remained stable, and guards who might have faltered now fought with renewed skill. At one point, a group of enemy fighters breached the outer defenses and moved toward the central courtyard. Lyra leapt into action, spear flashing, her combat precision unmatched. Beside her, Elias deployed small, improvised devices that disabled enemy weapons temporarily, allowing her to cut through their ranks with minimal risk. It was a combination of alien strength and human ingenuity, and together, they became unstoppable. The rival clans soon realized they had underestimated the fortress and its defenders. Their coordinated attacks faltered as they struggled against strategies they could not anticipate. Lyra's walls were too strong, her warriors too disciplined, and Elias's guidance too clever. The enemy retreated in confusion, leaving the cliffs of Vera 9 inches silence once more. As the dust settled and the suns climbed higher, Lyra surveyed the fortress. Damage had been minimal thanks to careful planning, and no lives were lost thanks to the coordination of her guards and Elias's crew. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to feel relief without suspicion. Elias approached her quietly, a faint smile on his face. "The fortress is safe," he said simply. Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable but her eyes softer than before. "Yes," she said, "because we work together." It was a simple statement, yet it carried weight far greater than any battle cry. For Lyra, It marked a turning point. She had always believed that isolation was strength, that mistrust protected her and her people. Now, she understood that strength could also come from trust, cooperation, and generosity. The workers and guards gathered in the courtyard, some still shaken, others exhilarated by the victory. They looked at Lyra and Elias, recognizing the power of the alliance. Elias spoke to them not as a commander, but as a partner, praising their courage and ingenuity. He shared simple strategies to improve the fortress further, teaching them to work together efficiently and without fear. Lyra watched silently, her thoughts turning inward. She realized that the human had not only helped defend the fortress, but had changed the way she viewed leadership, strength, and trust. For centuries, she had relied solely on fear and combat skill. Now, she saw a different path, one where guidance, generosity, and intelligence could create strength equal to any weapon. In the following weeks, the fortress thrived. Elias helped implement energy systems that reduced strain on the shields, created safe zones for workers during storms, and shared innovative techniques that improved efficiency in daily operations. Lyra allowed him freedom within the fortress, observing his methods closely and sometimes learning from them herself. Her guards began to speak differently about males. "The human is not like the others," one lieutenant said. "He is calm, clever, and generous. Perhaps there is value in working with him." Lyra did not reply, only observing. She did not fully trust easily, but she recognized the truth in the statement. Elias's actions had proven his value, not just in battle but in leadership, problem-solving, and care for the people. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the jagged cliffs, Lyra and Elias stood together atop the highest tower. Below them, the fortress glowed with life and energy, the hum of machinery blending with the quiet chatter of workers and guards. "You have changed much here," Lyra said, her voice quieter than usual. Elias looked out over the cliffs. "We changed it together," he replied. Lyra's eyes softened as she considered the human beside her. For the first time, she allowed herself to see beyond her fears, beyond the strict rules she had lived by for decades. She saw a possibility, a future where trust and generosity could coexist with vigilance and strength. "You are unlike any male I have known," she said finally. "You do not demand. You do not challenge. You give without asking." Elias turned to her with a faint smile. "Because giving can be a strength," he said. "It builds more than walls or weapons. It builds trust, understanding, and resilience." Lyra remained silent, letting his words settle. They carried a meaning deeper than any battle victory or fortress repair. They spoke of possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. Of a life that could include cooperation without betrayal, generosity without weakness. The cliffs of Vera 9, once symbols of isolation and vigilance, now stood as a testament to alliance, ingenuity, and mutual respect. Lyra, the warrior who had warded off all males, had learned that true strength was not only in fighting and surviving, but in recognizing the value of others, even those once deemed untrustworthy. And as the suns dipped below the horizon, painting the fortress in gold and violet, Lyra realized that her life and her fortress would never be the same. With Elias by her side, she finally understood that generosity, ingenuity, and courage could stand as tall and unyielding as the jagged cliffs themselves. The story of the fortress of Vera 9, once a solitary bastion of survival, had become a story of alliance, trust, and the remarkable strength of a human who gave without asking in return.